Did you know that you can buy a personal trainer who's a ghost, an autonomous chessboard that moves completely on its own accord, or a bottle of water that can make your brain think you're drinking whatever you want to be drinking? Welcome to 24 of the hottest tech inventions, from sizzling to scorching to straight up fire. Okay, number 24 is Hush Me. It's a mask, but instead of muffling your speech, it allows you to talk to people with 100% clarity. So they can hear what you're saying because there's a microphone directly in the mouthpiece. You can hear what they're saying because there are actually noise-cancelling earphones attached to the body, and no one else can hear what either of you are saying, thanks in part due to speech muffling material around the mouthpiece. It's pretty clever, but compared to some of the things coming up in this list, I'm gonna give it a 2 out of 10 on the heat scale. Okay, number 23 is the gloriousness that is glowing faucets. Or in other words, specialized LEDs that you can fit onto the inside of your taps. They're powered by the water pressure, so when the water is on, the LEDs are on. When the water's off, the LEDs are off. Okay, Aaron, it's a light. Get over yourself. Yes, but when paired with a temperature sensor, you can make it so that when the water's cold, the light turns blue. When the water's warm, like a bath temperature, the light is orange. And then when the water's so hot that you shouldn't be touching it, the light can be red. That's an easy 3 out of 10. Functional, as well as being cool. And thanks to Android for sponsoring this video. They've got some pretty interesting features that I will tell you about later. Here's a fun fact. I love cycling. But because I live in the UK, which gets about 2 nice days of weather per year, this gadget called Blink really calls to me. You attach your existing normal bike onto the Blink base, and it basically turns it into a static exercise bike with a twist. You pick a location using the app, you strap on a VR headset, and you are cycling in that location. Blink keeps track of your speed and direction, and because you're wearing a VR headset as well, you can look anywhere in whatever location you've decided. I wonder what happens if you fall off like a virtual cliff. 3 out of 10. And on a similar note, do you know what's really great? Gyms. Everyone is trying to look after their bodies right now. I actually remember reading a paper that said the up-and-coming generation drinks 20% less alcohol than just one generation above it for health reasons. The only issue is that actually getting the dumbbells to do all this weight training is not just incredibly expensive, these two here are literally $200, but also take up a stupid amount of space. Thankfully, there is a company called Better Body who's created one dumbbell that is completely modular. They're not the only company to have done this, but their offering has 9 weights, all the way from 2 kilograms to 30 kilograms in one. 3 out of 10 heat, which is still pretty hot. Alternatively, if the idea of a gym horrifies you, then the Lazy Reader glasses might be a little more up your alley. They contain mirrored lenses at just the right angle such that you can completely lie down, remove all strain from your neck, but still read the books you want to read and watch the TV shows you want to watch. Simple? Yes. A sign we're doomed as a society? Probably. But a clever solution to a modern day problem? Absolutely. 4 out of 10. Okay, have you ever found yourself wanting to take your electric scooter somewhere, but you couldn't because it wouldn't fold up into your bag? Happens all the time. Well, worry no more, because Poimo is a fully inflatable scooter. All the electronics are still in place, and all you have to do is to just pump it before you want to use it. It's part of a growing category of soft mobility, vehicles that are trying to facilitate safer interactions between their users than what we have now. This girl's having the time of her life. 4 out of 10. Okay, now for a couple of rubbish ones. And not that kind of rubbish. For example, the most sophisticated trash can on the planet. A company called Townew has built a bin that can detect when your hands are near it and open automatically, use thermoplastic sealing technology, or heat, to seal up the black bag inside of it before you have to open the bin and experience its horrors yourself. But not just that, once it detects that you've taken out your used sealed black bag, it realizes that it needs a new one, it can dispense one and inflate it so that it's literally ready to go again straight away. This place smells so bad. Now, still on the topic of trash, but thankfully not near any, do you know what's better than a bin that seals itself? A bin that you can't see. Introducing EcoLift, disposal sites so beautiful that they could be a tourist attraction. Definitely more of a tourist attraction than whatever the hell London just built, and that's because these aren't actually bins, they're just passages to disposal units underground. It keeps the area on top looking clean, it keeps out flies and rats and all the lovely aromas that usually come with garbage. And it also means that instead of the risk of overfilling and the inevitability of having to empty these bins once per hour, you can just empty them once per week by using a lift that brings the actual bins out from under the ground. Let's give that a 5 out of 10. So, about half as cool as number 1 on this list. But the trashiest of them all is probably my jokes, but home biogas. It's almost all in the name. When you buy one of these, you're effectively just buying a massive trash bag that sits in your garden and you pour your organic waste into. So that could be eggshells, it could be meat, it could be vegetables. And the bacteria within that tent will break down this organic matter and release cooking gas as a byproduct, which you can then use to power your stove and cook new food. I realise that large tents filled with rotting carrots is probably not quite what you had in mind when you think of cool inventions for the future, but you've got to commend the implications something like this would have for sustainability. Also a 5 out of 10. But here's where we start moving up that scale. Enter the My Eye 2. It's basically a vision replacement for people who are blind or even just partially blind. You clip this thing onto your glasses. I did also wonder why a blind person would just have glasses lying around. But anyways, this thing can look at whatever you point your finger at, it can understand it, and then it can dictate it to you. So you could pick up a newspaper and get it to just read you the headlines. You can use it to understand your environment. It can recognize roads, objects, billboards, and read them back to you. Full respect to anyone who has to live without vision, but at least tech is helping. Now, here is one that I cannot wait for development to speed up on. The mouthpiece toothbrush. You put one of these in your mouth, and when you turn it on, it'll start vibrating. And because it has a set of bristles for literally every tooth in your mouth, it can clean your entire mouth in 10 seconds.
Wow.
Not to mention that these things can auto-eject toothpaste for you, and that newer models have a UV light built in that can sterilize the mouthpiece between uses. I don't think the execution of these is quite up to scratch yet, but I'm well on board with the concept. 6 out of 10. Okay, I had this situation literally a couple of days ago. I was sat next to someone, I was showing them something on my laptop, and they went as far as to reach out and try to close one of my Google Chrome tabs by tapping on it. For the longest time, traditional laptops and computers have just not been touchscreen compatible. But this is changing. The Hello X2 is a gadget that you can clip onto the corner of any display, from 10 inches to 27 inches, and it can fire a web of infrared light directly across your screen. Anytime a finger interrupts that light, a specialized camera on the gadget can pick up where that interruption happened and map it to an appropriate mouse movement. Unlike the touchscreen on your phone, the way this one works means that you can use it with gloves, you can use it with a stylus, you can use it with an actual paintbrush. 6 out of 10. That's pretty hot in my books. Okay, if you've watched my series all about gadgets, you might have seen the Drop Labs shoes. They have a set of subwoofers inside them that can detect the music you're listening to via Bluetooth and send bass signals up through your feet, through your body, so that you can feel it. That's cool, but the Woodger vest takes it even further. It's covered in 6 haptic transducers that allow you to feel impact from 360 degrees. They're saying that it'll convert listening to your Spotify playlist into feeling like you're right in front of the stage at the Tomorrowland Festival, or playing a simple game of Call of Duty into actually feeling like you're walking into a war zone. It probably would raise the stakes of getting hit by someone if you knew you were actually going to feel it. But to be fair, if your aim is as bad as mine, you might just end up with some really sore muscles. This next one has a special place in my heart. If you've been following me for a while, then, well, thank you. You've allowed me to live my dream. But also, you might know that I used to be really into chess. I used to play for my school, I used to play for my county, I used to play for my country. I was not fun at parties. But the point is, my childhood dream product now exists. The concept is simple. It's that playing online is super convenient, but nothing quite beats the feeling of sitting in front of a physical chessboard. So, Phantom is an autonomous set that, based on a move that someone makes online, can precisely and silently move their pieces on your board to reflect that. And likewise, any move that I make will show up on the other person's end, whether they're using an app, whether they're using a computer, or another one of these Phantom boards. I don't even need to touch it. The inbuilt microphones mean that I can just say my move, for example, bishop to g4, and off it'll go. Maybe the coolest thing though is that as well as being a tool, Phantom is also just a showpiece. It has a mode such that you can leave it completely alone and it will automatically cycle through over 100 of the most famous chess games of all time. For a certain kind of person, I really do have to stress that, a certain kind of person, this is indistinguishable from magic. 7 out of 10. Robots. Humans have a weird thing with robots. We're fascinated by them. We want them to do all our work for us. We're also slightly worried that they will one day rule the world. But hey, in the meantime, ClickBot is one of the most versatile, intelligently designed robots I've ever seen. It starts with the brain, which contains the robot's senses, its ability to see, to hear, to think, to react. But then you can attach all the remaining pieces in any orientation you want. You can make a snake that can actually slither along the ground. You can turn it into a bike that actually drives on its own accord. You can make whatever this thing is that climbs up walls. And the brain is intelligent enough that it doesn't matter which one of the 10,000 plus permutations you put it in, it can also be a tool. A robotic arm that can serve you snacks? Yup. A pet that follows you wherever you go? Yep. A face auto-tracking smartphone holder? That too. And the whole angle here is that this is education for kids. In order to get the robot to do these things, it'll actually teach them how to code those features. Compared to the toys that I used to play with, plummin' hell. 7 out of 10. Okay. Listen to this product intro. Maximize your workout with an on-demand holographic training partner. That's literally the coolest sentence I've ever heard, and it's what the Ghost Pacer company is promising is going to be the future of running. They're selling a pair of augmented reality glasses that can effectively project an opponent in front of you, with the idea being that you can customize this opponent. Let's say that there was a certain time that you wanted to be able to run 5 miles in. You can set this ghost to run at such a speed that as long as you stay ahead of it, you will run 5 miles in the time that you want to. You can make it so that the ghost will match the speed of your own last run, to mean you're constantly improving against yourself, or you can match it to the speed of one of your friends. I could totally see this whole competitive element pushing you to do better, and for that, I'd give this a 7 out of 10. Oh, and if you are enjoying this video, then a sub to the channel would be warming. But equally, if the thought of a run makes you physically ill, you might be interested in the rocket skates. These are not rollerblades. You stick them over your existing shoes, you can still walk normally in them, but press down with your heel and you can activate a motor that lets you fly forward at 4 times your normal pace. Why am I still walking then? Technically, these were released in 2014, and we have had far more advanced versions of them since then, but none of them look as cool as the rocket skates. And in this list, that is the priority. 7 out of 10. Right, this one is incredible. We're talking about a bike that... Do you know what? I'm just going to show you. It looks like this. There we go. That's all I need to say. No, but seriously, this bike is not just pretty, but it's an electric bike, so it can detect the slope and the terrain you're on and adjust the amount of power it feeds you accordingly such that for you, the driver, it feels exactly the same. The wheels can be locked and unlocked via a fingerprint. The lights turn on automatically when it gets dark. You can use GPS to know where this bike is at any point in time. And let me be very clear here, there are no chains, there are no spokes. You can put your hands through the wheels. And if you actually wanted to use that space, you can also strap a bag inside of it to just carry extra stuff. What an ultimate flex. 8 out of 10. Number 6. It's getting hot in here. Yeah. Thanks. So, I would count myself as a fairly health-conscious guy. I don't count calories or anything, but I try to go for less processed alternatives when available. And so, when I saw that there was a bottle that could use scented rings to trick your brain into thinking you're drinking whatever you want to be, when all you're actually having is water, I had to try it. The theory makes sense. I mean, apparently 80% of your perception of flavor comes from your nose anyway. That's why they always tell you that if you're eating a food that you don't want to eat, hold your nose and you'll barely taste it. And to give this thing some credit, I've got the cola flavor on here right now. It's not the equivalent of having an actual Coke, but when I sip and I sniff at the same time, I'm convinced that I taste something. I even know that I'm being tricked, but it still works. 8 out of 10. Can you imagine if everyone in the world swapped their soda consumption for something like this? I think you could cut world obesity rates in half. But let's say you really hated water. We have an invention for that too. There's a company called Neverwet who's created a spray that once applied to clothing, shoes, or carpets can make it not just splash-proof, but super hydrophobic, by which they mean that any liquid that comes in contact with it will be actively pushed away. They've put people through military trials using this substance, and it's just crazy to watch. One second these people are crawling through a swamp, the next minute they are up and bone dry. There's another really cool one called aerogel, which you can apply to the skin itself, which means that you could completely immerse yourself in a swimming pool, and at the same time, when you get out, it'll look like you've never been. But now things are getting really serious. If you're one of the 4 people who, like me, got really excited about home biogas, then hold on to your waste tents, because the scientists have figured out a way to create plants that can act as light sources. They've managed to inject watercress with luciferase, the same enzyme that makes fireflies glow, and sure enough, the plants have followed suit. Think about the implications here. Plants can grow in harsh outdoor conditions, plants can harness their own energy, they can reproduce. You'd actually have a light source that is taking in carbon dioxide instead of being the one that's contributing to emissions. I think that's a 9 out of 10. Alright, depending on how much sci-fi you watch, you might have seen those visions of a future where machines are doing our work for us, everyone's using transparent phones, and there is a sky full of drones. Well, at least one of those seems to be happening. There is a company called Matanet who's building an automatic drone network that specializes in delivering blood samples and medicines. Right, but the execution of the whole thing is straight out of Hollywood. The whole thing is powered by a behind-the-scenes cloud software solution, and through this, the drones will know what supplies need to be delivered to what locations. And for the most part, they can get there on their own. They can dispatch themselves, they can navigate, they can travel up to 20 kilometers away, and they can recharge themselves. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Drones don't need to take bank holidays. So 9 out of 10. I think the implications of a network like this are enormous. Okay, if you could artificially enhance one part of your body, what would it be? I'm gonna rephrase that. If you could add one appendage, oh, forget it. Scientists have figured out how to create a working extra thumb. That's all I was trying to say. It's controlled using wireless sensors attached to your big toe, which sounds really alien, but from the studies they've done, they found that after a period of time, it starts to feel like a natural extension of your body. And all of a sudden, people can do things that usually require 2 hands with 1 hand. Factory workers could become 50% more productive. Surgeons could start operating without needing to have a second assistant to help them. And even more importantly, I could hold and stir a cup of tea without lifting this hand. It's both slightly terrifying and incredibly cool. But if there's one thing you can bet on in today's hyper-competitive society, it's that if there is an easy way to enhance yourself, people will take it. 9 out of 10. And just before number 1, the craziest tech of them all, do remember that I have another episode in this invention series, so I will leave it linked after this video. Okay, artificial people. Now, I realize it sounds like I'm pulling this info from my... Yeah, but people who aren't actually people already exist. There is a website that's literally called thispersondoesnotexist.com, and every time you refresh that page, it is using 2 neural networks to fight against each other and learn from each other to develop a face. A shocking, hauntingly realistic face that doesn't actually belong to anybody. And Samsung has already started running with this technology. They've created a platform called Neon AI, which is basically digital humans, with human mannerisms and human sentences, and in a lot of ways, human capabilities. You've got to remember that as the world starts to move more and more online, it's gonna start to matter less who is real and who isn't. We already have digital influencers like Lil Miquela, who already have their own clothing lines and their own merchandise. It's not out of the realms of possibility that in the very near future, you will be able to hire an accountant, a concierge, a television presenter who looks and sounds like a real person, but isn't. 10 out of 10. Now, in contrast with these crazy inventions that will define our future, I wanted to finish with 3 subtler things that will help your life in a more immediate way. Thanks to Android. 3 features that they have just launched this summer. And number 3 pertains to the keyboard. Not too long ago, Android added a feature called Emoji Kitchen, which allowed you to combine emojis. E.g., type 1 party hat guy and 1 hedgehog, you get a celebrating hedgehog. You can get pretty weird with this. And now they're taking it further. Whatever sentence you've typed, Gboard can recognize the tone of it and have a suitable combo emoji ready to slot in just before you send. Number 2, you might know that Android has really been improving its Messages app. For example, they added RCS support, which basically upgrades traditional SMS messaging, meaning that you can send text over Wi-Fi if data isn't available. You have typing indicators and the ability to react to messages. And the latest addition to this app is the option to star those messages and easily find them at any point in the future without having to scroll through all of your conversations. And number 1, I think this is pretty cool. So it turns out Android has a pretty underutilized feature called voice access. Originally developed for the disabled community, it's a bit like Google Assistant in that it can help you do stuff without touching your phone, but it's focused on granular navigation control. I can use it to scroll pages, I can open apps, I can go home, etc. just by talking. And this is improving too. From this summer onwards, voice access can start using gaze detection to turn on when you're looking at your phone and ignore you when you're not looking at your phone. Hit the link in the description to learn more about the Android summer update. To check out a pretty exciting operating system called Calyx OS, click here. Or to see possibly the most hyped pair of earphones of all time, click here. My name is Aaron, this is Mr. Who's the Boss. I'll catch you in the next one.
I think we put too much smoke in here.